For anyone who is or has a boss, this is The Boss Show with Jim Hessler and Steve Matenko.
Today on The Boss Show, know somebody who's looking for a job? Jim and Steve and their guest Tracy Wilin, author of Employed for Life, are here to steer them in the right direction.
Yeah, AARP really needs to stop sending out those notices when people turn 50. I mean, I'm dead serious. It's like, seriously? How many people who are 50 years old even have retirement on their radar screen anymore, let alone get this thing in the mail, this infuriating thing in the mail that says, oh, you're now a member of the American Association of Retired Persons, and you're 50. Come on.
Surprising news about how the workplace is changing, where the jobs will be, and where they won't be. All right now on The Boss Show.
Hello, I'm Jim Hessler, the founder of Path Forward Leadership Development. I'm the business guy.
And I'm Steve Matenko. I'm a Harvard-educated leadership coach. And I, on the other hand, and often in contrast, am the psychology guy. Jim, last I heard, the unemployment rate is down to 6.7%. First time it's been under 7% in what, several years?
Oh, 5 years. Maybe, yeah.
So with the unemployment rate relatively low, say that 4 times, does that mean fewer people are going to be looking for jobs?
Well, apparently not. I mean, my understanding of the way that they measure that is that people who are curled up in the fetal position at home watching Jerry Springer and not looking for jobs don't count in those numbers.
There's surveillance cams in my house you've been monitoring?
So it can be a misleading statistic. It really only indicates that among those people that are actively looking for work, 93.3% of them are now employed.
Ooh, you do the math well. And so
I'm good at reciprocals, what can I say?
We knew we'd find something.
Yes, thank you.
So as that number continues to go down, more people who've given up and aren't reflected in the employment or in the unemployment number will get back into the workforce. They're going to be looking for work, right?
That's correct. And so sometimes the economy improves and unemployment goes up.
And also, people who are already employed, as the unemployment rate continues to lower, will be looking for new jobs because they've felt stuck in their old jobs because there aren't any new jobs out there.
Although, and this is something we can discuss in a future show, the American workforce is much less mobile than it was 20 years ago in terms of their willingness to take new jobs, move to new cities, things like that. So that's something that's shifting in the economy as well. People are staying put.
And there's another reason that the unemployment rate can be a little misleading, and that is that the trend over time, and not that much time, is that baby boomers are retiring at the rate of, I understand, 10,000 per day, according to our guest today on The Boss Show, who I'm going to introduce in a moment. But first, if you work for a boss, I just want to make this really important point that if you work for a boss who regularly listens to The Boss Show, then the chances are you're not going to be looking for work because your boss is enlightened, right?
Good point.
But, just in case you work for one of the 17 companies who don't have as part of their mission statement, embrace the wisdom of The Boss Show, you might also be planning your next career move. And as usual, we're here to help all these people who may be looking for jobs. So where should you look? If you're in the market or will be in the market soon, where should you look? If you're not looking, you might want to pass the MP3 of the show on to your son or your niece who's in college or the beginning of their career, because what we're going to talk about,
or your husband who's sitting around on the couch watching
in the
Jerry
fetal
Springer.
position, right? Yes. What we're going to talk about is career trends for 2014 and beyond. In fact, how the career map is changing for the foreseeable future. And there's some really exciting and interesting, sometimes scary, but really intriguing trends here. And to help us demystify all this, we've brought to The Boss Show today Dr. Tracy Wilin. Tracy is the author of 11 books on the impact of technology on society, on work, and on careers, including her latest, which was published just a couple of weeks ago, called Employed for Life, 21st Century Career Trends. She's held leadership positions at Apple, HP, and Cisco, among other companies, and she's appeared on CNN, on Fox and CBS News, and in the Wall Street Journal, Chicago Tribune, Fortune Magazine, LA Times, and USA Today. So she
and now most notably
around.
On The Boss Show.
And now she can die happy because Tracy Wilin, welcome to The Boss Show.
Oh, thank you so much, Steve and Jim. I really appreciate being on your show today.
Good.
11 books. We found it nearly impossible to write one book. Our non-New York Times best-selling book, Land on Your Feet, Not on Your Face. How do you find the time to write 11 books?
Oh, it's exhausting, but I'm truly inspired by the people I talk to, which just keeps the energy going there. Plus on some of the books, I've had tremendous co-authors, and I think it's helps quite a bit when you're pursuing some interesting topics.
So your work focuses on the impact of technology on the workplace and on the on careers and on the phenomenon of work in our culture. And you quite often hear scary stories about how technology is eliminating entire classes of jobs that humans used to do, and how dire a consequence that's going to be for workers, especially at certain skill levels. From your perspective, is technology eradicating more jobs than it's creating, or vice versa? What do you see as the near-term future?
You know, it's a very good question. I get asked that quite a bit. I think that technology is creating jobs. I think technology is displacing jobs, and I think technology is replacing jobs. And I think that all of us should just look in our industries at the trends to figure out where we're best positioned. So, for example, you probably remember standing on airline ticket lines to get a ticket, and now you probably race to your computer to get on the Southwest A-list, or you may even pay up a little bit to be assured that you have a seat. Or you may remember going to a bank teller, but now you go to an ATM. So the reality is there are some replacements of jobs, but then at the same time, there's job creation. Just look at, I live in Silicon Valley, and the statistic that we use is for every high-tech firm job that is created, there's 6 extra jobs that are also created through tangent and adjacent types of industries. So I think you just have to look at, what is your job today? Is it so rote and replaceable that it could be replaced, or are you an industry that is actually accelerating new jobs and new job creation?
After the break, we want to talk about specific industries. But first, what do you see as the big trends, the overarching trends moving into the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
Well, one is, the big trend that I talk about quite a bit is just the fact that people are living longer. Where I was driving down in New Jersey, actually, there's a huge billboard that said a baby born today will live to 120. And that, the number of people living to 100 by 2020 will double. And this, will continue to accelerate. And what that means for people is that unlike probably your parents who scoped out a 20 to 30 year work life, you may be working 50 or 60 years. One, because you're vibrant enough to do that. 2 is you might need to retire because you can't afford it. And 3 is because, you have to stay energized and busy because you may be living to 100. So I actually think that's an overarching theme that all of us are facing at any age right now. And I think that's an important one to think about as you're planning your career and your job moves.
Yeah, AARP really needs to stop sending out those notices when people turn 50. I mean, I'm dead serious. It's like, seriously? How many people who are 50 years old even have retirement on their radar screen anymore, let alone get this thing in the mail, this infuriating thing in the mail that says, oh, you're now a member of the American Association of Retired Persons, and you're 50. Come on.
My mother and my uncle both sent me an ARP membership when I turned 50 as a joke.
Yeah.
But really 50 is, the cliche, of course, 50 is the new 30, but it really doesn't feel very old. Of course, I'm beyond it. So
a quick question before we go to the break. So we talked about the unemployment rate in the lead-in to introducing you. It would almost seem that the rate of change, technology creates change, right? And then change begets change, right? It's kind of the Alvin Toffler, future shock thing, right? Is there kind of an underlying amount of unemployment that we almost should expect because of that now? Because so many professions are changing, so many technologies are changing that there's always going to be a certain fairly large number of people in flux between their old job skills and their new job skills.
Actually, I don't know if I would say it would go in that direction. I really appreciated your opening because here's a few things that came to mind is, one is there are people who are unemployed, and I don't know if all of those employment numbers are completely accurate and count for people. So I appreciate that comment there because let's face it, when your neighbor doesn't have a job, they're in a recession, but when you don't have a job, it's depression. Right. And there are people out there who cannot find jobs, and I talk to them every day. Also, I think number two is that employment varies by area, and that's in constant fluctuation. So, for example, I, as I mentioned, live in Silicon Valley, and we're in an upswing right now. Silicon Valley is doing very well. Construction's doing well. All the ancillary jobs are doing quite well. However, I would say 10 years ago, we were not doing very well. So, it does vary by location and industry. And to your other point is job velocity. So yes, I think there is pent-up demand of people who are in jobs who would like to make moves because they haven't been able to make moves, and not necessarily having to move out of state, but rather waiting for the pipeline to open up a little bit so either they can make lateral moves or upward moves in their own companies or to move to competitors or customers. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was a great opening, and you really nailed, I think, a lot of the current issues right now.
Later in the show, we want to talk to Tracy Wilin about the trends for women in leadership, which is a pet subject of ours, despite the fact that we are not. But we are.
We're not women, he means. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But right after the break, we're going to look at the industries that look most promising for job openings in the near future. You're listening to The Boss Show.
Are you a boss with questions about how to manage your workplace? Contact Jim and Steve at thebossshow.com. Now, back to The Boss Show.
We're talking once again to Dr. Tracy Wilin, author of 11 books, including the very recently published Employed for Life, 21st Century Career Trends. And if you want to know more about her, she's at tracywilen.com, and that's Tracy with an E, TracyWilen.com. Twitter handle is at Tracy Wilin, and Facebook, Dr. Tracy Wilin with a dot after the DR. Tracy, talk to us about the industries that you see being up and coming for job openings in the near future. Some of what intrigues me is not just which industries, but why these industries are opening up.
Oh, absolutely, because I look at not only the industries, but I look at some of the adjacent opportunities that industries are creating. So, for example, the United States is a consumer economy. In fact, the Bureau of Labor Statistics states that about 4 out of 5 jobs in 2014 will be related to the consumer. So if you think about it, it's like retail, it might be hospitality, but it's different today. I think about it, Cyber Monday didn't exist 6 years ago, right? That's about when it came on the scene. Amazon.com, all of a sudden you were shopping right after Thanksgiving, and now we have the Cyber Monday to look forward to for extra sales. Well, that's e-commerce. It's a new norm now for shopping that didn't occur before. Well, that's creating new career opportunities. Just think about it. People in distribution, shipping, call centers, people who take orders and returns, drivers, packers. So there's a lot of opportunities through technology. This is one of these areas where technology is creating extra jobs in new avenues you haven't even thought about.
You say retail was up this past holiday season, but in-store was down.
Exactly. So in-store was flat or down, but retail in general and e-commerce is on the upswing. So it's just shifting, but there's new skills required. So, an in-store person who's used to dealing one-on-one physically with a customer will add on some of those extra skills, and you can move into different types of roles. If you look at hospitality, which is another industry that is projected to grow about 10% by 2022, all of a sudden buzz counts. People tell me that before they take a trip, they go to TripAdvisor. Well, TripAdvisor is just one of these new, and I'm sure you've been there.
Oh,
where you
often.
Go,
yeah,
right,
I do it. I'm addicted
there.
to TripAdvisor for trips.
That's right. You just don't go to the hotel brochure or website anymore. You actually want to know what people think.
Yeah, you can't trust what a hotel says about itself.
well, right. And sometimes you wonder about the opinions out there, but that's social media. So hotels now have to actually have social media experts. In fact, I was talking to a hospital that said they need social media experts because patients want to be able to dialogue with a hospital. They want to dialogue with their doctor or their nurse or their care team. At the same time, people who are marketing products want to get customer feedback earlier in the cycle. So now you have this whole opportunity of social media. And it's not just social media, it's social media by channel. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+, Pinterest, you name it. This is all new channels of distribution and marketing that didn't exist before. And talent is needed really to help us really maneuver through this new labyrinth of social media.
I'm stuck on something you said a few minutes ago. I'm gobsmacked by this 4 out of 5 jobs in the economy being related to consumer. Now that has to include the manufacturing of consumer goods, I assume. I mean, that can't.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So it's the whole.
That's the whole supply chain. Okay. All right. I just want to make sure of that because if you look at it that way, it's good news. If you look at it the other way, it's bad news. It means everybody else is making our stuff for us, and all of our people are just selling it, which I think isn't a good thing for the economy over the long term, right?
So actually, manufacturing, quite interesting, is another area that Made in America is becoming very popularized again. I'm sure you may watch the show Shark Tank.
Absolutely.
You may be
we did a
watching...
show on it recently, in fact.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just excellent. I was just watching an episode before I got on the phone, and that it's really revived, and it's very exciting, both entrepreneurship and also making products in America. It's still localized from everything. When I talk to recruiters about where the job placements are, it's somewhat localized, and a lot of the jobs are for plant managers, operation managers, and project managers. But what's changed about manufacturing is this whole idea of a gray-collar worker, that it's not really a blue-collar job, and it's not really maybe a white-collar job. It's a combination of the two, but it's much more technical and much more skilled than in the past. So if you've been in manufacturing before, you shouldn't expect to have the same experience. And I went to look at a couple of car factories, and I was amazed at what large percentage of cars today are fully automated, either through software automation or robotics or additive manufacturing. There's a whole new industry around just manufacturing.
Well, there's another impact that technology has on manufacturing, which I think bodes well for the United States over the long term, which is the supply chain is so tight now that that people have to make things in smaller batches and I think in many cases in closer proximity to the market in which they're going to be sold, which I think goes against the way things have been going. What I'm saying is someday somebody's going to say, well, I only need 5 of these parts. I don't need 100 parts to be made in a large batch. Make 5 of them, make them on a 3D printer, and have them delivered to me tomorrow morning. So I think that actually will draw a lot of, it'll decentralize manufacturing and maybe move a lot of it back to the United States. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's my theory, and I'm going to stick with it.
Absolutely. It's customization. Yeah. Absolutely. Customization and being able to change your supply chain, change your prototyping on the line, configure to unique tastes and demand. And I think that we've become the long tail of saying, yeah, I want to have a customized product for ourselves.
And speaking of customized products, going back to the hospitality piece that you brought up earlier, you talk about room service being reinvented. What do you mean by that?
I started to notice this trend, and I said, I wonder if this is more of a trend, but really, something that's happening. And sure enough, in the hospitality industry, I'm reading that there was just a number of changes in room service. So services are changing. So one, you go to a hotel like I did the Hilton, and they've eliminated room service. I went to a different hotel, and they customized the room service. I could customize anything I wanted on the menu. It was a different hotel chain. I went to a third hotel, and all of their ordering was with localized fast foods. I went to a fourth hotel chain, and they had a new whole boutique in the lobby where I could go in and buy, just like having, I would say like a cafe, but it's really more like a 7-Eleven, a grab-and-go kind of experience, from everything from coffee to wines to salads to subs, and then bring it to my room. So just accommodating the different consumer tastes. And I think that's one of the trends in hospitality, is that we're seeing more segmented brands. The boomer brand, mobility, a millennial, the ecotourism, customizing, for unique customer segments and their needs. There was another hotel I saw, mobility, another one dedicated to musicians. So it's becoming a very customized world, and so you need experts in these different fields, and really, how do you market to those communities, and what channels are they using to learn about your hotel?
You mentioned ecotourism. Say another word about that. What is that?
Well, ecotourism is just, if you read some of the hospitality trends, this has been a global trend that people actually want to go and stay at hotels that are environmentally friendly, connected with the environment in some way. They want to feel like they're not only having a great stay, but making a contribution to an environment. And a gentleman told me he just came back from Mexico, and he purposely wanted to stay in an eco-friendly hotel because of how they cleaned the water and preserved it, and how they preserved the towels, and had different types of environmentally friendly amenities in the hotel. And he felt like not only was he enjoying himself, but he was doing some good for the earth.
When we come back, the rise of women in leadership positions as a long-term trend in the workforce, as well as another long-term trend about portfolio careers. You're listening to The Boss Show.
Working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living, barely getting by. It's all taking and no giving. They just use your mind, and they never give you credit. It's enough to drive you crazy if you let it. 9 to 5.
Got a question or complaint about your boss? Send them directly to us via email, questions@thebossshow.com. Now, back to The Boss Show.
Tracy Wilin, I'm hearing a pretty optimistic point of view from you about the ways that technology is going to transform the economy. Are you as optimistic as I'm hearing, or is this is there some other? Are you giving us information? Or are you kind of pitching the idea of a very optimistic future about the job market?
Oh, I'm very optimistic, and I'll tell you why. I was born into a classical world. A high school degree or a liberal arts degree was all you needed to get a job, any job, and there were more jobs available. And when you joined a company, you just stayed there because they took care of you, and a lot of them even just covered your pension. Today, it's a different world. It's a technology-based world. Now, a lot of people are finding that they are not necessarily finding jobs right out of school like in the past. However, the opportunities are far greater. The Internet itself has created job opportunities. Think about it. eBay, you can, in these marketplaces, you can start a business and take international currency within a few hours. Those opportunities did not exist when I started. In fact, engineering was sort of a distinct type of career. Starting a business wasn't even heard of unless your family owned a flower shop or a dry cleaner. So I think the opportunities today are far greater in the past, and it's just up to the individual to go find them, grasp them, and do them. So I'm very optimistic.
Good. Speaking of opportunities, you talk about portfolio careers, which is another category of opportunities that didn't exist in anywhere near the amplitude a number of years ago. What are portfolio careers, and how much are they on the rise?
Yeah, so, by 2020, Intuit suggested that 40% of the workforce would be freelancing. According to the Freelancers Union today, 1 out of 3 workers in the United States are part-time, around 40 million workers. And the Gallup poll indicated in 2013 that many college-age students between 18 and 29 really didn't get full-time jobs, but rather had to move into part-time. So it's real. A portfolio career is really a collection of part-time project work or freelance work. I think the opportunity there for individuals is the branding. You can brand yourself as a marketing expert, a digital expert. If you collect enough projects, right, umbrella projects in a related area. So maybe you know social media, maybe you know PR, maybe you know how to blog, right? Maybe you know how to do an event. Maybe you know market communications. Well, you can bundle those projects together and brand yourself as a marketing expert. And I'll tell you, a lot of these companies today are going out to these freelance sites because they're realizing it's very difficult to train one person to do all of those things I just listed. But if I can find somebody who's had a number of experiences in that area, that's pretty valuable to me. Another profession that has a lot of portfolio career opportunities is really technology. If you've project managed or participated in a number of technology projects, you really are much stronger than if you stayed in one technology job. And the reason is that technology really moves so quickly. So you really have to keep up on top of it. And the best way, one of the great ways to do that is by enlisting in a lot of projects. It's been around for a while. I would say that the movie industry on the production side has been that way for a while. You collect, producers and your actors and actresses together, right, to make a movie, and then they disperse and they find their next projects. I think it's just going to become a little more mainstream.
So the customization that you're talking about is not just for consumers, but also for workers. So we get to tailor our own careers in ways that we have not had the chance to before, is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely, and if you talk to people, and particularly in the younger generation, this is a positive thing. I would think that some people, in my generation might say, you have to work for a large company. But a younger generation would embrace some of these, being able to really control your own career and really guide it in a direction that makes sense for you. And also, many feel that, you have more time. You can control your time. You can control your life more than in the past. Work is about, working to live rather than living to work.
Which is what we know that millennials are all about, and which becomes is a great trend.
It also becomes another great argument in favor of universal health care. I just had to throw that in there as well. If people are going to be moving that rapidly from job to job, one of the things that's going to prevent them from taking those entrepreneurial risks is fear of not having health care. And if the employer is still the primary provider of health care in our economy, it hurts the economy because we'll have fewer people branching out into entrepreneurial plays because of that fear.
So healthcare, by the way, is another area, and I just want to touch on that because it is a large employer in the United States, and many recruiters just tell me they still have shortages on doctors and nurses. But if you look at healthcare as a career, it's a very interesting choice, and I'll tell you why. It's easy entry. You can get in and get jobs with a certification as a technician, and then you can get a job for a 2-year degree, then you can move into a 4-year degree, right? So you can make choices about your education and where you want to go. Number 2 is you can decide, do I want to be on the person side, the patient care, or am I interested on the finance side, the marketing side, the technology side? So I actually think if people are confused, healthcare is quite interesting, particularly because the baby boomers are living longer, and there's a basket of services just being created to service that population, everything from preventative health to home health care services, to even substitute services. Instead of going in an old age home, people want to go to lifestyle resorts now. So I think there's opportunities there.
Last thing we want to talk to you about today, Tracy, is the rise of women in leadership positions. As I said earlier, a subject very close to our hearts, even though we're not women. So talk to us about it. What do you see?
Oh, I get so inspired talking about women. The first statistic I heard, it was about 2 years ago, that a woman started a business somewhere in the world every 60 seconds, and I just thought that was so exciting. And then I looked at the Summer Olympics. If you remember that more American women actually participated than American men. And then we had the statistic about the military, right? There was our largest number of women in the military. And then I read, right, that there were more women who were pursuing education and achieving in education than men, and having higher starting salaries than men. And so I started this research project in 2012. It's now a book called Women Lead, looking at this whole rise of women in leadership. And I get very excited about women because I truly feel that the time is ripe for women to really excel in a number of areas. And just case in point, Janet Yellen in the Federal Reserve, Mary Mack in Wells Fargo, Mary Barra at General Motors. I mean, there's a lot of exciting things right now happening, and I think that will continue. And
what tips would you have for women looking to gain a competitive edge and make their work lives more fulfilling?
Well, number one is I think education is truly a key. I think that, however you decide on what your education you're going to pursue, I think it's important. I think number two is making smart moves in your career plan, lateral moves, entrepreneurial moves, looking for skill-building moves so that you can really dictate where you want to be. Number three, technology. You always have a leg up if you have technology skills, so go for it. And finally, number four is take risks. In my research, we found that men and women both said what set them apart from men and women was when they took a risk, both in the corporate world and as entrepreneurs.
Amen. Tracy Wilin is author of the book Employed for Life and the book Women Lead. Co-author of that, am I right about that, or was that a single author?
Lead editor on Women Lead. We had 16 people who worked on that project. It was a beautiful project. Right.
As well as 9 other books. You can find Tracy's resources at tracywilen.com. Again, that's TracyWilen. And her Twitter handle is at Tracy Wilin. You can find her on Facebook at Dr. Tracy Wilin. That's Dr. Tracy Wilin. No spaces, of course, on Facebook. Tracy, such a great pleasure to have you. Thanks for making the time for us on The Boss Show.
Oh, Steve and Jim, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed my time here.
Thank you.
You're listening to The Boss Show.
This has been The Boss Show.